Chapter 22. When I came into the office, Paul looked me straight in the face. He knew it was unnecessary to search me and the food, but he knew he had to do it. He also knew that he should not even think about not doing it. It was as much his duty as wearing a uniform and carrying the cell keys. But you could see in his eyes that he was wondering why. Even when he was searching me and not looking in my face, I could tell by the light touches on my pockets that he didn't want to do it. And with the food, it was the same. The chief deputy sat behind the desk, watching everything. To him, this is how things were supposed to be, and how they would be. Paul and I left the office and walked down the narrow, dark corridor. "Where would you like to meet him?" he asked. "In his cell. I don't mind." "You want me close by?" "No, I don't think so." "It can be different now," Paul said. "I'll be okay," I said. "How is he?" "He's taking it pretty good." "Any changes?" "I haven't noticed any." We came up to the steel door to the cell block. "You sure you want to be alone?" Paul asked again. "You're the first visitor since that news." "I'm sure I'll be all right." "If you say so." He opened the steel door. For the first time, the prisoners did not call to me or stick their hands through the bars as I passed. Some spoke quietly, others only nodded, but all were watching. Paul and I continued down the block to the last cell. Jefferson was lying on his back, staring up at the ceiling. Paul looked at me again. I nodded to him to indicate that I was not afraid and I wanted to be alone with Jefferson. The deputy opened the cell door and let me in. Then he locked it and left. "How are you, Jefferson?" "I'm all right." "I brought you some food," I said. His body took up the bunk, so I set the bag of food on the floor near his head. I went to the wall and stood under the window. "You need anything, Jefferson?" He shook his head. "You want to talk about anything?" He shook his head again. Then he just lay there, staring up at the ceiling while I stood watching him. "What day is it?" he asked without looking at me. "It's Friday, Jefferson," I said. "Friday," he said to himself. "Friday." He was quiet for a moment, then he slowly let his feet slide to the floor and he sat up on the bunk. "Look like it's pretty out there," he said, gazing up at the window. "Yes, it's a nice day," I said. "No clouds anywhere, just blue." "You think it's going to be like that day?" he asked. I didn't answer him. He was looking out the window when he said it. Now he turned to me. "I hope it's that kind of day you want, Jefferson." I said. "The kind of day I want?" he said. "The kind of day I want? I never got nothing I wanted in my whole life. Now I'm going to get a whole day?" I didn't know what to say. He looked at me a while, then he turned to the window again. "Do you like fruit, Jefferson?" I asked him. "I can pick up some fruit and some pecans. Ice cream, funny books, things like that." "I want me a whole gallon of ice cream," he said, still looking out the window. I saw a slight smile come on his face, and it was not a bitter smile, not bitter at all. "A whole gallon of vanilla ice cream. Eat it with a pot spoon. My last supper, a whole gallon of ice cream." He looked at me again. "Ain't never had enough ice cream. Never had more than a nickel cone. Used to run out in the quarter and hand the ice cream man a nickel and he gave me a little scoop on a cone. But now I'm going to get me a whole gallon. That's what I want, a whole gallon. Eat it with a pot spoon." "I can bring you some ice cream any time, Jefferson," I said. "I'm going to wait," he said. "I'm going to wait. I want a whole gallon. Eat it with a pot spoon, every bit of it, with a pot spoon." He smiled. He smiled now because he had something pleasant to look forward to, though it would be on that last day, and he would save it until the very last moment. "You want to hear about the news from the quarter?" I asked. "Stella had her baby." He looked at me, not as he had done in the past, in pain, with hate. He looked at me with an inner calmness now. "Was it the ice cream?" "He favor Gable?" he asked. "With little babies, they don't favor anybody too much," I said. "Old Gable," he said, and smiled to himself. Got himself a baby. Then I saw the face change. He was no longer smiling, but staring at the wall. We was supposed to go hunting that day. He had forgotten about the ice cream now. He was remembering the day he was supposed to go into the swamp with Gable, but instead had ended up with Brother and Bear at the liquor store. "Inez is still giving her fares up the quarter," I said, trying to get him back. "But no music, no dancing. She calls that sinning. If you want your music at a fair, you have to go down to Willie Aaron's house. Willie still has that stack of old lowdown blues, Tampa Red, Mercy D. You know, all of them." He was not listening to me now. He seemed to be thinking about hunting with Gable. "I just thought of something," I told him. "Let me bring you a little radio. You can have music all the time. You can listen to Randy's record shop late at night." "Randy still on?" he asked, looking at the wall, not at me. "Yes, he's still on," I said. "I was listening to him just the other night. I have to play the radio low so Tonty Lou can't hear it. These old people, you know, all music except church music is sinning music. So I play it so low I can hardly hear it myself." I laughed to make him laugh, but he did not. "Do you want me to bring you a little radio the next time I come?" I asked him. He nodded. "Yeah. Edwin's has these little Philcos, not too big," I said, and I boxed my hands to show him the approximate size of the radio. "Would you like one of those?" He nodded. "I wish I had money on me," I said. "I'd go and get it right now." "Don't bother," he said. He said it as though he couldn't believe I really wanted to get it for him. "I'll get it tomorrow," I said. "I'll have them bring it to you so you have the music over the weekend." He didn't have anything more to say. He sat there, not looking out the window now, but looking down at the floor as if he had forgotten all about the radio, about the ice cream, about Gable, about everything. I wanted to leave, then go home for the money to buy the radio, but I was afraid the sheriff and his deputies might misinterpret my reason for leaving so early. I was sure we were paying closer attention to everything now, and they would not have understood my reason for leaving earlier than I usually did. So I just stood there until the deputy came to let me out. Paul wanted to know how everything had gone between Jefferson and me, and I told him it was much better than ever. He looked at me as if he felt I was making this all up, but I could see in his face that he wanted to believe it. I told him that I had promised Jefferson a radio, and that I would go home and get the money and buy one. I would get it from Edwin's department store and then leave it here for one of them to take to Jefferson so that he would have music over the weekend. Paul thought it was a good idea, and he promised to give the radio to Jefferson himself. I didn't go home. I thought I would borrow the money from Vivian, and I went back to town to the Rainbow Club to wait until she got out of class. The bar was in semi-darkness as usual, with the usual 2 or 3 old men talking more than drinking, and Claiborne behind the bar talking with them. I ordered a beer and told Claiborne about the radio. He didn't charge me for the beer, and he went back in the bar and spoke to the old men, and he came back with a couple of dollar bills and some change. He took $5 out of the old leather wallet that had once been light brown, but had turned almost black over the many years that he had gone in and gone out of Claiborne's back pocket. "Thanks," I said. "I'll get it back to you sometime this weekend." The muscle in his left jaw moved a little to show that he had smiled. Then he jerked his head toward the wall, a sign that I should go around to the other side and see if I could get in there. To see what I could get in there. So after finishing the beer, I went through the side door into the cafe. It was much more brightly lit than the bar, warmer, and you could smell the food from the kitchen. A man and a woman ate at one of the tables. Another man sat eating alone at the counter, and Thelma was behind the counter near the cash register. "Well, well, look what the cat dragged in," she said. I had been at the Rainbow quite a few times lately, but I had not eaten in the cafe. I told Thelma about the radio, and I told her that Claiborne had donated something. She listened patiently, and I could see her face changing from patience to sadness to anger. Her mouth tightened as she looked around the room at her 3 customers, then back at me again. The anger had left. "You hungry?" she asked. It was stern, but loving, too. "No, I ate before I came," I told her. She didn't believe me. "I got some smothered steaks there," she said. "Shrimps, chicken." "I'm not hungry." "You want to get that radio now?" "I would like to get it this afternoon." "How much they cost?" "About $20. "Eat something. I'll make up the rest," she said. She went back to the kitchen and dished up some rice and beefsteak and sweet peas, and she added a little lettuce and tomato salad and a couple of slices of light bread. "How much more you need?" she asked, after she had set the food down. "About $10, I said. "But listen, Thelma, I can borrow some of that money from Vivian." "Vivian got them children," she said. "I can let you have it. I'll bring it back tomorrow." "I ain't no hurry." I ate the food hungrily because I had not had dinner, and I sopped up the gravy with the light bread. Thelma watched me all the time. When I finished, she put a wrinkled $10 bill on the counter by my plate. "Here." It was the kind of "here" your mother or big sister or great aunt or your grandmother would have said. It was the kind of "here" that let you know that this was hard-earned money, but also that you needed it more than she did, and the kind of "here" that said she wished you had it and didn't have to borrow it from her, but since you did not have it and she did, then here it was, and with a kind of love. It was the kind of "here" that asked the question, when will this all end? When will a man not have to struggle to have money to get what he needs here? When will a man be able to live without having to kill another man here? I took the money without looking at her. I didn't say thanks. I knew she didn't want to hear it. I went out to my car and drove back uptown. Edwin's was not the best store in town, but it was the place where most people bought what they needed. Those with money either went to Morgan's department store or to Baton Rouge or New Orleans. As you came into the store, you saw clothes for women on the left and clothes for men on the right, all set out neatly. There were 2 other customers and just 1 saleswoman who did not show much interest in me. I went to the back of the store, passing the furniture department with its chairs, couches, beds, chiffrobes, dressers, and the refrigerators and iceboxes, gas and wood-burning stoves, washing machines. There were the garden and yard equipment, hoes, rakes, shovels, axe handles, mowing machines, yo-yo blades, cane knives. And at the very end of the store were the radios and kitchen appliances on shelves against the wall. I saw the little radio that I had in mind, and I took it down from the shelf to look more closely and feel its weight. Then I set it back on the shelf and turned on the knob, and after warming it for a few seconds, it started playing. I moved the lighted dial to get another station. I could find only 3, 2 in Baton Rouge and 1 in New Orleans. but that was normal for this time of day. At night, you were able to tune in others. You could get one as far as Del Rio, Texas, and another as far east as Nashville. I was listening to one of the Baton Rouge stations when the saleswoman came up behind me. You gonna buy that? I looked around at the short, stout, powdered-faced white woman. Yes, ma'am. Her face changed, but only a little. How much is it? I asked. $20 plus tax. Do you have one in a box? That one's brand new. Her face was getting hard again. It's a present, I said. I would like one in a box. I can put this one in a box, she said. No, ma'am. I want a brand new one, I said, if you have one. You can have this one for $1 less, she said. I prefer a brand new one, please, ma'am, I said. She snapped the radio off and turned away. She was gone about 15 minutes. I knew it couldn't possibly take her that long to find another radio, but because I had refused to take the used one and because she felt quite sure that there was no other place in Bayonne where I could find another one, she knew I had little choice but to wait until she got back. Brand new one, she said behind me. Seal ain't even broke. Does it have batteries? I asked her. It's ready to play, she said. You want it? Yes, ma'am, I said. She started up the aisle toward the cash register, but just then another white woman came into the store. The clerk set the radio beside the cash register and went to see what the white woman wanted. The other woman was not buying anything. She only wanted to talk, so they stood there about 10 minutes before the clerk came back to wait on me. After ringing up the bill, she asked me if I needed a bag, but she asked it in a way that I knew she didn't want to give me one. No thanks, I told her, and after paying, I took the little radio under my arm and left. The courthouse was to the right and across the street from the store. I walked between the parked cars and past the statue of the Confederate soldier and the state, national, and Confederate flags. Paul and Sheriff Guidry were in the office. Paul saw the package under my arm, and I could see that he was happy that I had remembered. The sheriff looked up at me from his desk. Well, Professor, is that the radio? Yes, sir. I hope you don't mind. No, I don't mind this time, he said. But from now on, you ask permission before bringing anything else up here. I spoke to the deputy. The deputy can't give you permission to bring things in here. I do, he said. I was quiet. Leave it, the sheriff said. I'll see he gets it. Batteries, I hope. Yes, sir. Batteries, I said. I had almost said batteries. How did it go today? He asked. All right, I said. The sheriff nodded. I'll see he gets it. Thank you, sir. I looked at Paul and he nodded and smiled. He probably would have said something encouraging if the sheriff had not been there. I went to my car and drove back to the Rainbow, hoping that Vivian would be there and that we would have a drink and just sit there in the semi-darkness alone together.